We're now calling this meeting. If you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Traffic and Parking Commission, you may appeal the decision by filing a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. Per the Tennessee Open Meetings Act, Public Chapter Number 300, members of the public are invited to provide comment on matters germane to the items on the agenda. Item 2.0, do we have approval of the agenda?
Move to approve.
We have a second. It's been first and second. Any questions on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? It is passed. Item 3.0, approval of July 8th, 2024's meeting minutes. Do we have a motion? We have a motion on approval of the meeting minutes?
Move to approve.
It's been first and second. Any questions? All in favor say aye. Any opposed? It is passed. Before we jump into public comment, we just want to recognize Ms. Costonis. We understand today is your last day. I know my time on as chair of the commission, you have been very helpful in coaching and guiding me and myself through this. And anybody on the commission has had any questions. I know NDOT staff, you've been super supportive. So my understanding it's been 16 years, so you're going to be missed. We really appreciate you, and good luck on your future endeavors. I won't put you on the spot to have a speech, but if you would like to say a few words, feel free.
Can I say a few words to introduce my replacement? This is Belinda Ramsey with my office, also a very experienced attorney. And you'll be glad to hear that Erica Haber is staying on the team that's representing y'all. So she's carrying on all that, knowledge and learning and experience. So you should be well represented in my absence.
Great. You'll be missed. Thank you for your time here. With that, we'll move on to 4.0 public comment. We did have one person sign in on the sign-in sheet that I believe is for a specific item. We will get to you at the appropriate time, but I believe we have a special guest in the audience today. Item 4.1, we will have a special presentation on Choose How You Move, the Choose How You Move overview by the mayor's office. If you don't mind, please come forward. Feel free to have the floor, state your name prior to speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioners, Councilmember Siegel, Nashville Department of Transportation. Thank you for allowing us to visit with you at this month's meeting. I'm here with Michael Briggs, our Director of Transportation Planning in the Mayor's Office. He's going to walk you through some more of the details on our proposed transportation improvement program, Choose How You Move. As I think most of you know, that this proposal will now be going to the voters of Nashville on November 5th. I want to thank Councilmember Siegel and her colleagues on the Metro Council for their suggestions and their support and ultimately unanimous approval in the Metro Council, as well as the Davidson County Election Commission, who approved on a bipartisan unanimous basis the final ballot language at their meeting on August 1st. So this is an exciting time for us as a city, certainly for our team in the mayor's office and the people in this room. We've been talking about these issues for a long time, and for some of us like me, a very long time. My public life started on the Nashville MTA board, now We Go Public Transit, and before that, I leaned on transit to save money and ultimately become a homeowner. I spent 2 years proudly serving on this commission, and what you're about to see is, we hope, an extension and acceleration of your work, and I wanted to offer a little bit of context and perspective before I hand things over to Michael for a more in-depth review. In our first set of executive orders back in January, we expanded Metro's green and complete streets policy. This includes integrating and prioritizing multimodal street improvements such as bicycle boulevards, protected bike lanes, high-capacity transit corridors, connected and accessible networks of sidewalks and walking paths, and safe and convenient street crossings. And my first capital spending plan, also approved by the Metro Council in February, We proposed the city's largest transportation investment in 7 years. It included an additional $4 million in neighborhood transit centers like the Rip Patton North Nashville Transit Center that's about to open, that is connecting 9 bus routes without having to have all of them go into downtown for reaching other parts of the city. It also included $10 million in new sidewalk construction, $5 million in new bikeways, and $12.5 million in Vision Zero transportation safety initiatives that will keep cyclists and pedestrians, as well as motorists, protected around the city. It's our biggest investment overall in Vision Zero, and if you pay attention to the most recent data from NDOT, it is paying off. But as you all know, traffic calming measures remain as popular as ever. Pricing parking remains volatile, and at 6 miles of new sidewalk per year, we're still leaving too many neighborhoods out. Incremental improvements aren't enough to keep pace with the growth trajectory of this city. It wasn't enough 10 years ago, and it certainly isn't today. The problem has gotten worse by every measure, whether you look at minutes or fatalities. Of the top 50 major American cities, Nashville is one of just 4 without dedicated funding for transportation and infrastructure. And what it has left us with, as we discovered earlier this year, is the worst commute in the nation. We're a big city on this issue. It's past time to start acting like one. On the surface, this is about transportation and connectivity, but beneath the surface, it's about cost of living, dignity, and equity. This is how we serve a 24/7 workforce. It's how we serve best the people who serve us. For more on Choose How You Move, I'm going to hand things off to Michael, and I look forward to feedback and appreciate your time and attention today.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Michael Briggs, Director of Transportation Planning in the Mayor's Office. And what I'll present today is just a quick overview of the Choose How You Move program. We have a lot more detail in the document and even a longer presentation that we'd be happy to present in other settings. So if you're a part of a neighborhood organization and want us to come out to your group and present, you can go to the Hub Nashville site and request for someone from the transit team to talk to you about that, and we'd be happy to come to your organization and talk more about the program. So I'm going to quickly run through some of the key highlights of the program, really what's in it, why we chose those elements, what's the cost, and when will we get the benefits. Big thing is, as Mayor O'Connell mentioned, is it will be on the ballot November 5th, and voters will have an opportunity to decide on it. So the ballot language that Metro Council approved looks exactly like this. You won't see the words Choose How You Move on the ballot, but you see the elements of the program explained in plain language, talking about expanding the sidewalk network, expansion of the transit system to 24 hours a day, adding neighborhood transit centers, improving safety for all users, and upgrading our signals. Then there's a summary of the cost, and then how we will pay for the program. And so if voters in Davidson County want to implement the program, they will vote for it. If they do not want to implement the program, they will vote against it. And so this will be the very last item then on that ballot on November 5th. So Choose How You Move will add or upgrade 86 miles of sidewalk, and we really cannot build sidewalks fast enough in Davidson County. This is really how we begin to complete our most pressing sidewalk needs, and this is a good example of the lack of sidewalks on one of our main arterials or pikes on Dickerson Pike. And so these are areas where people are having trouble accessing bus stops and being able to walk along roadways with traffic moving at high rates of speed and crossing these roadways as well. As the mayor mentioned, we only constructed 6.5 miles of sidewalk last year. So this program will essentially double that. And we know that pretty much every trip begins with a step. And so completing this sidewalk network on our most essential streets is really critical to how we move forward as a city and connect people to other forms of transportation. So we oftentimes get laughs during this part of the presentation because we want us to think back at how technology has really evolved over the years. And if you think about how we moved from cassette tapes to CDs to MP3s and streaming. We're really using outdated signal technology and can really make major improvements here for all modes of transportation on many of our streets. So we feel we can do much better at modernizing our traffic signal system, because you've experienced this if you've been at a big event, and our police officers do a great job of clearing the intersection, but we oftentimes don't know what's happening 2 or 3 intersections down. And so these signals, nearly 600 of them, 600 intersections, will be connected into a new traffic management center that's actually in this building, a few floors up. And we'll be able to bring them online, have analytics running behind them, and be able to manage our traffic congestion and signals in a much more modern way than we have previously. So we've talked sidewalk signals. The third S is service. So we will double the hours of high-frequency service to all day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on our busiest corridors. So think Gallatin, Nolensville, Murfreesboro Pikes, and Dickerson Pikes having much more frequent service every 15 minutes or better, and operating 24/7. So as part of that, we're establishing 54 miles of all-access corridors where everything is improved. So that's better sidewalks, improved signals, more frequent service, and improving safety. And so we'll move people faster and safer on these streets with transit vehicles arriving around the clock. And we'll also consider transit-only lanes in areas where it makes sense while keeping local neighborhoods in mind. As part of the transit improvements, we'll build 12 modern transit centers at key locations throughout the city. And this will give us a choice to travel directly from neighborhood to neighborhood without having to route through the busiest parts of our city, which is downtown. And you can see an example of this in North Nashville with the Rip Patton Transit Center that has just come online in the last couple of weeks. We're also going to add 4 more express routes at 4 more express routes and prepare for regional service when our neighboring counties are ready to act. And these will be connected through some of our 17 park and ride locations, and they'll be located near transit routes so that more Nashvillians can have access to transit, even if they're not near a bus stop and able to walk up to a bus stop. So imagine some of these locations connecting you to events downtown and not having to pay for parking. So our final S is safety. And choose how you move is how we expand mobility options and safety at the same time. And we'll upgrade nearly 285 bus stops as part of the program. And we're going to redesign 35 high injury intersections to reduce risks, because the majority of our fatal and serious injuries are occurring on about 6% of our roadways. And finally, we're going to add 35 miles of bikeways, and these support the mayor's Green and Complete Streets executive order that was signed in January. And so a good example of elements like this can be seen on the Madison Station Boulevard, Complete and Green Street, with improved signage, traffic lane markings, and enhanced pedestrian crossings. So this is a comparison of safety enhancements where on the left, we feel this is the infrastructure Nashvillians deserve. That's much upgraded, much easier to access, gives most of our modes of transportation its own path. Whereas on the right is what most of Nashvillians deal with, having to deal with larger trucks, signals that are not upgraded, and no dedicated path to transit. And so you're probably wondering why we picked these elements. Through the past decade of planning, we heard about our inadequate streets and infrequent transit. And as the mayor mentioned, Nashville is still one of 4 cities in the U.S. that has no dedicated source of transportation funding. And so it's really challenging for us to meet our modern needs as a city and also compete with our peer cities for federal funds. So we have the ability to leverage back $1.4 billion in federal money through this program. We went back to over 70 plans done in the last decade and pulled from over 66,000 pieces of input. And we've pulled together the most practical solutions for Choose How You Move. And at the end of the day, this is really how we bring down the cost of living for our residents and provide a transportation system that works for a 24/7 workforce. And so this matters is because affordability is at top of mind of many of our residents, and housing and transportation are often the two biggest expenses for most households in Nashville. And so just owning a brand new car is really an implicit tax of almost $1,000 per month when you combine the car payment, gasoline, insurance, and then saving up for repairs. And so we really want to lower our transportation costs for our residents. So this is how it will impact you at the pocketbook or wallet. It's when you go and spend $50 at Target or Walmart, you'll pay an additional quarter or 25 cents that will go 100% to this program. That's about $6 per month for most households in Davidson County. Two things that are unique about this is that we already pay this amount anytime we shop out of county. If you go to Cool Springs, Murfreesboro, Mount Juliet, you're paying a higher sales tax rate that is in line with this. And so for us in Davidson County, we estimate nearly 60% of sales tax being paid by those from out of county. So it's those that are commuting in, buying lunch, buying things on their break, on an errand, or we're also securing additional money as people spend visiting all the great things we have in Nashville and spending money at restaurants and buying souvenirs. So when will we see the improvements? Think service and technology improvements sooner, larger capital projects later. But this is really how we begin to catch up on our to-do list in a big way and help make our budgets and existing funds go much further. We can make a year one impact with some transit service and safety enhancements. And a lot of that's a matter of hiring drivers and purchasing buses and getting them delivered. Within 5 to 10 years, we'll have more than half our signals upgraded and modernized, and the first all-access corridors will begin to come online. And then at 15 years, we'll have nearly 600 traffic signals upgraded and have completed all 86 miles of sidewalk and have all access corridors operating on our busiest corridors. So you can find out more about the program at nashville.gov/transit. There is an interactive map on the website. You can zoom into your part of the county, learn what services and projects are planned through the program. And we look forward to questions that you all have.
Thank you for that. Any questions or comments from commissioners?
Sure, I've got one. What can we do to help?
Oh, we appreciate your being a part of the conversation today, but otherwise, I think our expectation is that this program supports the work of this commission. So, have a good conversation here, but also just when you're at home with your neighbors, this is going to be one of the most important things we talk about as a city all the rest of summer and fall. So, thank you for the opportunity to visit with you about it today.
One more question. Where on the ballot will this be?
It'll be at the end, so you'll have all the candidate elections ahead of this, and then this will be the one item that is a ballot initiative.
Any other questions? Well, I'll say former Chairman Green bragged about the fact that this commission produced the last 3 mayors, I believe. So there's somebody sitting here that's in their future, so he was proud of that fact. We appreciate your time and look forward to this opportunity.
Well, Mr. Chair, I appreciated the opportunity to work with Chair Green and also with you and some of the other commissioners here, and I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you today, so thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Can I add one quick thing? I forgot to also recognize that Commissioner Mohammed had served on the Community Advisory Committee in helping to create Choose How You Move. So I wanted to be sure and thank him for participating in that. So thank you.
Thank you for your time. With that, we'll move to item 4.2. We did have somebody on the list, Charles, but I believe you're here for a specific item. to talk to. You're not, anybody in the audience here for just public comment for anything that's not on the agenda?
So we're with the Visions Your Advisory Committee. We just wanted to speak briefly whenever it's admissible on Lebanon type speed reduction.
Okay. We'll bring you up when that item is up. Is anybody in the audience here to speak on something not on the agenda? Yes, you're on the agenda. You're 7.3. Okay. With that, I will remind the commissioners, if there's an item on the agenda that you would need to recuse yourself, please do so prior to that item. Yes. Okay. Go ahead. He wants to speak on it now or at 6.1? It's the first item after the consent. You can speak at that, okay. Any other council persons in the audience? Okay, with that, I will move, so approval of the consent agenda. I'll read each item, and then if we need to remove any, we will ask to do so. So item 5.1, mandatory referral of 2024 M006AB-001, a request for right-of-way abandonment of a portion of Edenwold Road connector, 3rd Street, Cumberland Boulevard, and in an unnumbered alley requested by Metro Water Services. Item 5.2, mandatory referral of 2023 M002AB-001, a request for right-of-way abandonment of a portion of alley number 196, requested by Kimley Horn and Associates. 5.3, authorization for a new pedestrian hybrid beacon on Highway 100, approximately 100 foot north of Chafin Drive, requested by NDOT. Item 5.4, authorization to replace existing yield control at Quail Road and Quail Run with new stop control, requested by NDOT. Item 5.5, authorization for all-way stop control at South 5th Street and Crutcher Street, requested by NDOT. And item 5.6, authorization for vehicle size restrictions, no trucks over 8 tons on Knight Drive from Brick Church Lane to Whites Creek Pike, requested by NDOT. Any of these items need to be removed from the consent agenda? If not, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
It's been first and second. Any questions on the motion? If not, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Item 5.0, the consent agenda has passed. Okay, we'll move into item 6.1 on the regular agenda. Councilmember Coopin, would you like to come forward? Item 6.1, request for all-way stop, Cheatham Place and Delta Avenue, Cheatham Place and 9th Avenue North, Cheatham Place and 10th Avenue North, requested by Councilmember Coopin. You have the floor. Please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Councilmember Jacob Coopin, District 19. Excuse me. Commissioners, appreciate your time this afternoon and always. This is an item that's fairly close and near and dear to my heart. There are a couple streets in my immediate neighborhood that I have witnessed over the years, a number of crashes of varying levels, usually 1 to 2 a year at some of these intersections. Historically, at Arthur and Cheatham, we had a lot of problems. I believe current mayor, former Councilmember O'Connell, was instrumental in getting a stop sign at that area, and we've seen accidents plummet, I think, believed to 0 at that point. There were a couple accidents recently that came to my attention in these areas, and I recognize and appreciate, NDOT working to honor the traffic manual and the challenges that come when you put stop signs that may not be 100% indicated by that manual. However, I have submitted to y'all some photos from the intersections this feels like a four-way stop. When you approach it, it feels like, when you approach it from on Cheatham, it feels like when you stop, it should be a four-way stop. So folks come, they stop, and they enter the intersection. Additionally, when you're coming to a stop, if you look especially to your left as you're going from Cheatham to Rosa Parks, if you look to your left, the sight lines are poor. It's hard to see traffic coming from far away. I know, spoke to Mr. Freeze about putting some no parking to corner signs, but still there's houses, there's bushes, there's things that make that sight line very problematic to where you can't, even if you know it's a two-way stop, advancing into the intersection is needed to understand if there's oncoming traffic. I know I personally have been subject to a couple of near misses in that area as I've stopped, inched forward, tried to look, and then cars coming flying down that street and almost hitting. Again, I recognize that the standard, I believe, is 5 crashes in a given year, and we're at about 1 crash per year, so I understand that's lower than the threshold. But that being said, these are continually problematic intersections. And I personally don't want to wait until there's a serious injury, crash, or worse at these intersections. Again, I've seen a number of instances. I believe, I don't know if y'all got it in your packet yet or not, but the Buena Vista Neighborhood Association also submitted a letter requesting this. I've been a big advocate for the traffic calming program. Most times when folks request something like this, I say, hey, we've got to go through the traffic calming program. We have to go through kind of the standards. But this is one that has just continued to become a problem and continue to become a dangerous site. So rose to the level of me making this request. I really don't want to see, again, an injury, crash, or worse. And I believe that the intention of the manual is to not put stop signs in places that aren't indicated, where someone might get confused and not realize it's a stop sign. But to me, based on how these are quiet neighborhood streets that should not be flowing quickly anyway, most people would understand a four-way stop, and in fact are currently behaving in some way like there is one there. So again, really appreciate y'all's consideration for this item and happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilman? Not staff, would you all like to talk to your all's findings?
Thank you. I've examined the crash history of these series of intersections at Cheatham and Delta, and Cheatham Place and 9th Avenue North, and Cheatham Place and 10th Avenue North. The councilman is correct. The MUTC warrant for crash history is 5 or more crashes that are correctable by always stop control within a 12-month period. And to give you specifics on each intersection, Cheatham and Delta, for the period of 2019 to 2024, there have been 2 crashes. One was an angle crash, one was a head-on crash. At Cheatham Place and 9th Avenue North, over the same 5-year period, there have been 4 crashes. Now, all 4 have been angled crashes, but that's a crash rate of less than once per year. At Cheatham and 10th, there have also been 4 crashes for the period 2019 to 2024. 3 of those were angle crashes and 1 was a rear end crash. And again, the warrant for always stop is based on 5 or more that's addressable by an always stop that's in any 12-month period. It's really not even close. The other warrants that could be considered but really aren't applicable in this case are volume analysis. And to give you an idea about what kind of volumes would warrant an always stop, it's pretty much what you would expect to. It's almost as the same amount of traffic that would warrant a traffic signal. Again, these intersections are very low volume. Metro has, in the past 12 months or so, installed traffic calming on these north-south corridors. We've also installed some additional auxiliary signage that says cross traffic doesn't stop. And I've gone out to have a work order for our sign shop to install no parking to corner 30 feet, within 30 feet of each of these intersections on every approach. We're also refurbishing the stop bars there, and we're installing new crosswalks. We're rehabilitating crosswalks where they exist now and installing new crosswalks where they don't exist right now too. So what we'd like to do is uphold the denial of an always stop control because it doesn't meet warrants, and let the traffic calming that we've installed, let that work. Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Any questions from commissioners? Yes, sir.
Said traffic counts seem low. Is there an imbalance of traffic counts? Because it seems like Cheatham has stop signs the whole way, but it's the other cross sections that don't. And why is that?
Yeah, each of these are configured as two-way stop. I'm not aware of the historical traffic counts out there, but just in, anecdotally in being out in what is presumably the peak PM hour, just not observing a large amount of traffic that's anywhere close to what would meet warrants for volume warrants for an all-way stop control.
That answer your question? Got another question? A follow-up?
Well, Chair Mason, my name is Brad Freeze. I'm the Deputy Director of the Nashville DOT. So greatly respect the council members' own previous experience with this and looking at it. We, from the department standpoint, favor to take more of an incremental approach and right size our safety projects based on engineering study. We feel like we've done that and done the appropriate warrant analysis from the uniform traffic control devices. I know everyone, the MUTCD, we say that a lot, but it is something that we standardize as far as Metro Code. It is written in Metro Code that we follow that. However, the Traffic and Parking Commission has the ability to, issue stop signs where it is against that. So that, in our opinion, we would not, based on our engineering judgment, in looking at it and doing the analysis, doing the sightline studies. I actually was out there today and drove it. We actually have the new crosswalks are on the ground, new stop bars are on the ground. That will greatly help having those stop bars in a place to where you can actually come up to the stop bar and check the sightline triangles. I did check those again. We do have some vegetation that he mentioned that can be addressed. The big thing in what you'll see from the Buena Vista neighborhood, if you see the packet, is they mentioned specifically the lack of sightlines due to parked cars. And that's how we're approaching it at this point, to address the sightline challenges that could be with cars parking up into the intersection, which is inappropriate already per standard.
So, Helmy, what's the downside of putting up is this a four-way or three-way stop?
It's a two-way.
Four-way, what's the downside?
It's a two-way.
If I may, the downside for that is that you will actually see an increase in the number of crashes. In particular, when drivers go through an intersection where an all-way stop is not warranted, there will be a larger number of rolling stops. And people will learn that, hey, this really isn't, it's not, there's just a bunch of stop signs here, and drivers will, at an increasing rate, will just kind of roll through the intersection rather than coming to a complete stop, and we'll see an increase in the number of crashes instead of a desired decrease in the number of crashes.
Randy Rogers is the apartment complex that just recently opened there. And I know that SP was done in maybe 2014 or 15. It's been a while. What would have been the difference of how we would have looked at that approval from a traffic and parking and NDOT perspective, where, all of the traffic for those 100 families that are living there is required to go around into the back area of that. So they are going on Cheatham and then making a left and then having to come out that way too. Would that have changed maybe if we had put that out there in the past?
No, I don't believe there would have been.
Councilwoman?
Thank you. Just a couple questions. Is there a different analysis that's used if you look at all three of these stop signs together versus each one individually? I guess if we're thinking about crash data, it seems like they had some different crash data, and if it might be that putting a stop sign in at one intersection actually helps all three instead of like boom, boom, boom. Was that analysis done, or does the manual even contemplate that sort of analysis?
No, we look at warrants for each intersection. We've got crash data that goes all the way down to the intersection level. And, that will inform us as to, the rate of crashes, the type of crashes, time of day, vehicles involved. There's a lot of data that go into this system. And we can look at it, historically all the way back, probably 5, 6, or 7 years. But in determining a warrant analysis, you don't look at a collection of intersections and say, well, if you do that, then you have to ask yourself, well, which intersection would meet the warrant?
During the traffic calming process, were raised crosswalks considered?
I do not believe they were actually installed as part of their calming. No, there are no raised crosswalks in those current plans for the traffic calming project.
Was it considered?
I'm not sure. I would have to check back in the original design. I can't confirm if they were or were not considered at this point, but I'd have to look back and check the original design.
I don't recall them as part of that process, as part of the initial traffic calming process. I don't recall raised crosswalks. I also believe that at least one of the intersections in question did not receive any sort of traffic calming along it. So there is at least one street that does have traffic calming, and that has still helped. But the other, I believe, at least one, if not both, don't have traffic calming. And I think the challenge that folks run into here is a combination of sight lines and feel, where it does, given the low volume of cars and given the fact, as Commissioner Kotornik said, given the fact that there's cross stop signs and both streets feel similar, psychologically, I think folks come to this stop sign and they think that the other way has a stop, and then they inch in, and as they're inching, they're kind of looking, and then boom, they get hit. Chair, am I allowed to ask a question? And if I ask it, who should I direct it to?
Let's finish questions from the commissioners,
Okay,
and we'll circle back on that if that's okay. Councilwoman.
Thanks. I want to go back to sort of the 3 versus 1, because I think what we often do is we look at these things in isolation, whereas when you're putting in 3 stop signs, even though traffic is going different ways, it sort of creates this feel of a slower, more neighborhood area, which it sounds like the manual doesn't account for, which is, I think, a little problematic. So I just want to make that point, and I'm not sure sort of how we address that. If there is a way, please correct me. And then I guess sort of question, though, when we looked at putting in the signs for no parking to create larger sightlines, did we look at whether we could use, say, plastic bollards around those and paint and ways to actually physically keep people out of those spaces? I know in my neighborhood, which is a similarly urban neighborhood, I mean, we have plenty of no parking places that, like, if you can park there, somebody's gonna park there. I see them catty corner of my house in a no parking spot every day. And so have we looked at anything else when it physical to prevent people from parking there?
I can speak to that. We have not in the past looked at physical barriers to prevent parking. It is something interesting that we could look at possibly in the future, but we don't put barriers on the road just to prevent people from parking. Unless it's like, if it's a protected bikeway, for example. I mean, we have delineators that we install and also protected bikeways that we use to prevent people from parking within the bikeway.
Thanks. And then I guess the other question, in addition to raised crosswalks during traffic calming, were any sort of bulb outs considered that would also effectively prevent people from parking there, but sort of slow traffic near the road and give a shorter crossing for pedestrians?
I'll have to look back at the designs to know if there was considered bulb outs, but we can actually do that with paint as well, and bulb outs and talk about that at the treatment of the intersections.
That's my only questions for now.
I did look, when I was looking at this one before, about the traffic calming that was done, and what I do see is that 10th was applied for in September of 2023, but hasn't been selected yet. Arthur, which is not necessarily part of this, but is within that kind of 4 that's going, was applied for in August of 2022 and has not been selected. And so we just recently got 9th and Delta early this year. And it does seem like those are necessary, but, you know, it kind of does seem we did the exact same thing we do everywhere else. And so there's some sense of, you know, if you're putting traffic calming on one street, you are going to move traffic that's going to speed a little bit further on the other streets. You know, I think that this is a small enough area that, you know, stopping at these places is important. I know that traffic counts seem pretty low, but I'm leaning to be supportive of this, just because it doesn't seem like the traffic calming in and of itself is adequate to prevent people from feeling like they should, you know, be able to cross the street. I see that there's a playground at 9th. There's, you know, public housing that's right there. There are other things throughout this neighborhood. So I would be supportive to kind of move along of approving this.
Well, just a point of clarification, you would, the recommendation here is to uphold the denial of all-way stops. So you would be, just to clarify what your support would be for, supporting staff's recommendation or
No, I
the
would
alternative?
be against the upholding of NDOT's denial.
Great. Just want to clarify that. Any other questions from commissioners? I had a few questions. So on the cushions or the traffic calming, is that happening at, where is that happening specifically? I see it here in this photo to the right, but is that happening in any other locations at these 3 intersections?
If I recall, there are traffic cushions installed at Delta and 9th. I don't recall whether there are installations on 10th, Fred.
Yeah, as you heard from Neil, that we do have record of them, their applications, but we have not yet been awarded as part of the traffic calming program. And the reason why we do that is our traffic calming has in the past included like whole neighborhoods and whole systems when we move forward, and we've gotten away from that and gone to street applications per street because of the challenges of actually putting a limit on the scope of those, because when we start to do those in the neighborhood, we usually start to grow those projects into something that takes a very long time to deliver. So in that way, we've actually made an administrative decision, I think 2 years ago, to do traffic calming programs per the street application. But I certainly do understand the commissioners or the council members' recommendation based on the characteristics of a neighborhood. I myself have actually come up and ran through a warranted stop sign or an unwarranted stop sign because it just didn't feel right by accident, with the neighborhood. So I would say there is a risk when you put stop signs up that aren't warranted that people will just run through them. Then you'll have what kind of what Andrew said is you can have an increase in accidents, in collisions.
What is currently in place at 10th and Cheatham? Do we have that offhand, and/or what is the plan for signs, cushions, or refreshing the stop bars?
The stop bars were refreshed today, actually.
Okay.
when I was out there, but no, I do not believe we have any traffic calming project planned for 10th.
Okay, so just 9th and Delta.
That's correct.
Okay.
And if I may, the areas, it's an unfortunate inverse. I mean, we're very thankful and appreciative of the traffic calming, and that has certainly helped to slow speeding down our neighborhood. The better the traffic calming, the worse the sight lines, just an unfortunate layout. So I believe, and please excuse me if I get it wrong, but I believe the intersection with traffic calming, either 9th and Cheatham or Delta and Cheatham, I think it might be 9th and Cheatham, there's a big utility pole. So as you approach the intersection and you look to your left, you're looking at a pole, which is one of the pictures I submitted. So the traffic calming has helped, but you still end up in that situation. And to Mr. Freese's point, I personally didn't just take a request in the neighborhood and bring it forward. I evaluated, based on my general sense, and I share his sentiment that if it doesn't, you might run through a stop sign where it doesn't feel warranted. In this case, it does feel warranted. So kind of what Mr. Freeze is saying, you're having the opposite effect where it feels like it's a four-way stop, even though it isn't. And again, to Commissioner Kenordic's question, it's interesting to me how it's set up because you do see that speeding cross traffic, but then from a commute perspective, you see folks go from Arthur to Cheatham or Cheatham to Arthur as they enter the neighborhood and exit the neighborhood from Rosa Park. So it's almost flipped in a sense where you do see that kind of commute traffic crossing those streets. And then, again, intersecting with speeding traffic going up and down.
I did have a question about what were the crash numbers again for those intersections?
For each of these intersections, I looked at a 5-year crash history. For Cheatham and Delta, there were 2 crashes during the 5-year period. One was an angle crash, one was a head-on crash. For Cheatham Place and 9th Avenue North, for that same 5-year period, there were a total of 4 crashes. All were angled crashes. For Cheatham and 10th, there were also 4 total crashes for that 5-year period. 3 were angle crashes, 1 was a rear-end crash. And just as a reminder, the warrant is 5 or more crashes in 12 months. And those need to be crashes that can be addressed by an all-way stop.
And for those crashes, were any of those like 2 in the same year, or were they all in different years? Or
I did not break them out by year. I just filtered for the period of time from 2019 to 2024 to see, hey, is there a large number here? And if there is, then I could zoom in on any particular 12-month period.
Councilmember Coopin, I would just like to talk around your discussions with the Historic Buena Vista Community Association. It did state here at our quarterly meetings, residents' concerns about speeding cars and lack of sight lines due to parked cars on both sides of the street were raised. We appreciate the street calming already implemented, but that was out of majority necessity as Jefferson Street traffic diverted through our neighborhood to get to Buena Vista or to Kroger. Did y'all talk through the route that people are taking to get there? Because then, that route from Jefferson Street to that Kroger is outside of these 3 intersections. And then it sounds like adding signs to limit parking close to the stop signs would be applicable as well. But just wanted to get your thoughts, and since you had conversations with them around those 2 sentences.
So a couple things. First of all, they got me that letter today, so I hadn't had a chance to discuss with them and kind of clarify some of the points. As I read it, I think there was a couple things that the intention was correct, but might have gotten some of the details around it kind of conflated, as there are a number of traffic issues. But this is something, like I said, since I was a member of the neighborhood association, these intersections have been talked about as a member, as a president of the association, and now as a council member. And it's kind of been something where we have kept kicking the can down the road, like, hopefully traffic calming helps, hopefully change, different things help. And it's a continued issue that the neighborhood knows, just knows all too well. Many in the neighborhood have experienced crashes themselves. And, again, I'm very respectful and appreciative of NDOT's process and hesitate to deviate from kind of the standard way to achieve traffic calming and achieve stop signs and things like that. But this is one that seems to keep rising to the level of necessity, again, given all that traffic. I don't know how the crash data panned out. I know that 2020 to 2022, of course, we all saw lowered traffic on our roads. That's just another data point. I don't know how that plays in, but I do know the neighborhood association, it's a regular topic of conversation. When I brought up that I was bringing it before the commission, they were very excited about the opportunity. And again, recognizing that, I've seen crashes that could have been much worse. And again, I can attest myself and many that I know in the neighborhood have been part of near misses. So I know we've got the crash data. I don't know if we've got the near miss data, but I would posit that there's quite a few, slammed on the brake just at the right time, didn't get into a crash, but came really, really close. And those are odds I don't like to play with. And again, my hope is that the upside outweighs the down, right? Where if we happen to see that we install these four-way stops and we see crash data or people running lights or running the stop sign goes up, we can always choose to then take them back down. So we've got to go through a clear level, but it's, as evidenced by the data, there are somewhat regular crashes in this area, and the neighborhood does talk about it quite a bit.
Commissioner, I will make one point about liability as far as Metro and putting up things that technically don't meet the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Advice. There is a liability for us in legal proceedings with result if we put, for example, if we were put a signal up that was not warranted and someone had an accident and died at that signal, then it's possible that we could be liable. That's just a consideration that we make when we make these judgment calls, when we look at these things. But I definitely, we're here to support the safe operation of the system.
So it sounds like this area and this situation has been not addressed for a long time, and it sounds like the eyes are there. I think whole comprehensively, it sounds like NDOT's taking steps to refresh and do some immediate addressing, even though the data does not warrant a four-way stop at these three intersections. It does seem like that you all acknowledge that some work needs to happen there, considering the recent things that have happened and just the overall traffic from what's been expressed from the community association. So if there's not any other questions, I would open the floor to a motion on this agenda item.
I do have one more question. Is there a way that we could, recommend a, study or some more work on NDOT's part to look into, is this warranted or is this not warranted? To kind of.
I think that's a great point. I think to your point, Mr. Freeze, in the liability aspect, legal, I don't know what our purview here is on that, but would be open to hear what you all's opinion there.
There we go. You all have the discretion to defer the item and send it back to staff to collect further information, if that's something you would like to do.
Okay. I think with the attention that is on it now, we're upgrading and addressing items and areas, and there's obvious work with, this letter and it being drafted, and ensure that wholeheartedly there's a comprehensive approach while we're there working to potentially address some other areas. Would the commission be open to a 1-month deferral on this item to allow NDOT, council, the community association, community association to come up with some more firm, direct recommendation other than, just denying the four-way stops and then it being open and not really don't want to kick the can down the road again, but open up the door for some structured conversation.
Yeah, I think I would be open to that. I think I'm open to these stop signs, but not in isolation, right? It's what sort of maybe painted bulb outs can come along and sort of highlight to people that this is an area where you're stopping, where you're slowing. Along with that, I think that could really work well to provide pedestrian safety, vehicle safety, and sort of slowing down traffic patterns overall in this whole area. And so I think a 1-month deferral might help because we can kind of look at these things, what was looked at in traffic calming, and put it all together for a real comprehensive slowing of the speed.
Is 1 month enough time?
That would be plenty.
Do we have a motion to defer 1 month?
Second.
It's been first and second to defer item 6.1, 1 month. Any questions on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's passed. Thank you for your time. Item 6.2, approval of draft sidewalk vending ordinance revisions amending section 13.08.040 of the Metro Code to add additional language for the commission to consider when evaluating disciplinary cases of sidewalk vending permits. Staff?
I know it says staff, but this was actually an item that came up in our meeting, and so I asked council office and Ms. Costonis to work together to come up with language that would allow us to have also an option for probation, so we don't have to jump just to like revocation or suspension. This is a process that the TLC does as well, and this is mirrored off of that process, but it'll just allow more flexibility going forward when we look at tricky cases like we did a few months ago.
Any questions on the?
Chair, for, as far as staff, we have no objections to this. It does provide, we feel like it provides another alternative for the commission and for NDOT to enforce the sidewalk ordinance.
Any questions from commissioners? Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
It's been first and second. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It's passed. Item 6.3, approval of draft loading ordinance revisions, amending sections 12.48.030 and 12.48.050 of the Metro Code to allow NDOT to set time limits for passenger and freight loading zone. Mr. Freeze.
Yes, so Commissioners, this is as a result of Connect Downtown and a lot of our discussions that we've had with those who do deliveries, but also the service industry downtown. We find that the loading zones, the current restriction for 30 minutes is restrictive when it comes to doing servicing multiple businesses downtown from one stop. With the limitation of actually loading zones in the first place downtown. So we are wanting to make this change and leave this up to the department to make those adjustments and set the timing based on study. And by that, I mean specifically our Connect Downtown study.
Any questions from the commissioners? Go ahead.
Just one question. You said that you think that you're going to change the time limit on this. Do you have some indication of what that looks like?
Yeah, we are actually holding stakeholder meetings with a lot of the delivery and service companies. Another item that's previously on the agenda, the smart loading zone, is part of those conversations as well when we're doing outreach with regard to that. So we want to set that appropriately based on the number of stops that they need to make and the number. We have found that some of those deliveries, they may deliver to like 4 or 5 businesses at one stop. So that they cannot do that in 30 minutes. So we are timing that appropriately, making sure we will put a limit on it. But at this point, it's looking like 2 to 3 hours possibly could be our limit on loading zones.
And then when we get to the smart loading, that would be the pricing part of what you're going to do with those 2 to 3 hours.
That's correct.
Great.
Any other questions? We have a motion. We have a second? It's been first and second. Any questions on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? It is passed. Move on to item 7.1 under unfinished business, approval of smart loading pilot program requested by NDOT. I believe staff's recommendation is defer this by 2 months.
Yes, we're coming back, correct, Chair. We're coming back actually asking for a 2-month deferral on this as we go through our outreach on actually talking to, and we're going to be advertising a little bit more in the public as far as what the program is going to look like, do some more FAQs on the website, but also more outreach to the delivery and service companies that are impacted by this. So yes, we are asking for a 2-month deferral. In addition to that, we will be back with updates to the draft policy that you have previously seen before you. We will be updating that and bringing that back before you. So we're asking for a 2-month deferral to do that.
Move for 2-month deferral.
Is there a second? It's been first and second. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? It is passed. Item 7.2, I believe there was some public comment on this item. It will be deferred for, it is being requested to be deferred for 3 months. Would you all still like to speak? Would you would? Please come forward and state your name for the record. So item 7.2, updated discussion on reducing posted speed limits on Hermitage Avenue, Lebanon Pike from Korean Veterans Boulevard to the Wilson County line, requested by NDOT. If you don't mind, state your name for the record prior to speaking and hit that button in your microphone to turn red. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Robin Lovett Owen. I am the pastor at Christ Lutheran Church, which is in South Nashville. I'm also a member of the Vision Zero Advisory Committee.
My name's Charles Weingartner. I am a resident of the Inglewood neighborhood, but I am also a member of the Vision Zero Advisory Committee.
And my name is Ben Hubert, and I'm also on the Vision Zero Advisory Committee.
We wanted to come out today to speak about why we believe that the speed reduction on Lebanon Pike is quite urgent, and a 3-month deferral. We would like to encourage you to consider following through on the Lebanon Pike speed reduction. As you probably already know, Lebanon Pike is in our high entry network. There's about 10 deaths every year on Lebanon Pike, in addition to hundreds of crashes every year. The deferral especially is problematic because we know that most of these injurious crashes will happen during daylight savings time when it's darker outside. And so this kind of deferral will worsen that problem as well. So, so when we think about Lebanon Pike and safety and reaching that Vision Zero, that is, we wanted to encourage some urgency around that.
Yeah, I'll add a couple more comments. The largest public feedback that I've received regarding reducing these speed limits has centered around additional burdensome to drivers on their commute. If you look at the posted sections of Lebanon Pike and what the speed limit currently is versus what NDOT is recommending, and you just do simple math calculations on distance, speed, time, the total length of time, extra amount of time that it would take for someone to travel from the county line to Korean Veterans Boulevard would be 4.5 minutes, less than 4.5 minutes. However, it is well established that the reduced speeds that NDOT is suggesting do make significant impacts to human health and safety in accidents, in traffic violence. 4.5 minutes is not a burdensome amount of time to anybody to deal with traffic. That is in addition to the fact that most motorists are not traveling the full distance of Lebanon Pike from the county line all the way down to Korean Veterans Boulevard. They're going to Old Hickory Boulevard, Bradley Pikeway, Central Avenue, Stewart's Ferry Pike, to get to their ultimate destination along the corridor. So the additional burdensome aspect of it, I don't believe really holds any merit. Additionally, the other thing that we are seeing is enforcement is lacking. Reducing the speed limit simply because enforcement is currently not up to public standard simply falls short due to a perfectionist fallacy. It can improve conditions along the corridor. It will improve conditions along the corridor. I think NDOT and the mayor with Choose How You Move and the Vision Zero Advisory Committee acknowledge that additional engineering components need to be made along the corridor. Engineering road safety is incumbent to reduce the enforcement burden. And so we look forward to that to being done as well in the future. particularly supporting Choose How You Move and the complete street section along the Lebanon Pike corridor. But yeah, simply put, we think this is an important thing for the safety of all Nashvillians, and people that are traveling along the Lebanon Pike corridor. Look for your support. Thank you.
We actually have a presentation to share with you. I'm actually going to call Derek Haggerty up from our Traffic and Engineering Office to provide a presentation on this. So our hope with this presentation is to give you more of a comprehensive background of our speed studies that we're doing on all of our pikes in system-wide, in what we're actually doing, and then why we actually are asking for a 3-month deferral at this point.
All right. Hi, everyone. Derek Haggerty with NDOT. Like Brad said, just a quick overview on how we set speed limits. Let me make sure the technology is working. Gotcha. Where should I be pointing it? Yeah. Battery dead. I got you. Oh, can you? Gotcha. All right, we'll make it work. Worst case scenario, I just talk for a little while and we get the general point. All right, so for you, you see the agenda that we're going to hit on. Next slide, please. Yep, so background, a lot of the arterial speed studies that you see taking place right now are a direct result of our Vision Zero action plan and implementation plan. I'm not going to read this verbatim, but you can see one of the main strategies we have there is lowering speed limits along the major arterial. I know later in this meeting, you'll get an update on fatalities across Nashville. You'll see our arterials are well represented there. So slowing vehicles down there, making things safer on essentially all the pikes, key part of our Vision Zero action plan. And then just showing some of the building blocks there that we kind of lean on for best guidance. NCHRP 966, which I'll get into in a little bit, and just FHWA proven countermeasures. A lot of what we do is pulled from research that's really taken on by a lot of major institutions, traffic organizations. Yeah, and the reason you'll see us lean on that quite a bit is that we don't want these to be individual decisions. You know, if we're setting the speed limit to what Derek Haggerty thinks is best, that's probably not going to work for 95% of the county. We're looking to rely on these larger data numbers and just seeing what works well across the country in other places that has some data behind it. Next slide, please. All right, so we talked a little bit about the MUTCD today. This is that FHWA document that kind of guides what signs, signals, markings look like, how they're applied. You know, I missed the first part, so I don't know if you got into it, but really why this document first came about is to ensure uniformity across the country. So, you go to Hawaii right now, stop sign looks the same as it does here in Nashville. Just helps set expectations. There's also some language in there about setting speed zones that we have up there. I think the big takeaway here is that, the federal government really wants these speed limits to be set based on studies. Now, you'll see it does note other than statutory speed limits, and that's something we've used here in Nashville in the past, specifically with lowering speed limits on local streets, both in the USD and recently in the General Services District. Local governments have the ability, generally if they're granted by the state, which in Tennessee we do have at the current moment, to set speed limits based on certain types of roadways as a whole. So that typically doesn't require a typical study, though I believe for these last 2 times we did, just because we knew, pretty big initiative. Next slide, please. All right, so NCHRP 966, and I'm gonna read off my notes here so I get this right. NCHRP is the National Cooperative Highway Research Program, which is part of the National Academy of Sciences, Engineer, Medicine. Big thing you see under this umbrella for us in transportation engineering is the Transportation Research Board, TRB. Deputy Director Freeze is very involved in that organization, and that's the primary research board that drives a lot of what happens in transportation. So they set up a lot of standing committees to tackle issues that they're receiving feedback from across the country. One of that is speeds, and actually we had a TDOT representative, Michelle Nickerson, who we work pretty closely with on a lot of safety projects on our state highways, was involved with this one. The goal is to set up a clear, simple tool for governments to use when setting speed limits and taking into account, all the factors of the roadway context. We don't want to just look at speed. We're looking at a whole host of other factors, which I'll share in a minute here, so that we understand, really the context of the roadway and how all modes, all access points function. So, next slide, please. And I will say, this document is publicly available. I also have a copy saved on my laptop. If anyone wants to see this, let me know, or just Google it. Pretty easy to find. So this slide here is really high level what we're looking at. Like I said, we're starting with roadway context. Where is this? How does it function? A downtown urban street, a little different than if we're up in Jolton, kind of a winding rural area. So we want to put this into context. And then we're looking at two factors which really interact closely: speed distribution and safety. So I think we've spent a lot of time talking about safety today. We're going to talk a little bit more about it later. But speed distribution is really an important part of this that ties directly into safety. It's probably something you've all experienced, in one way or the other. Generally, we see lower crashes between vehicles when speeds are generally similar across the board. So a lot of times you'll see speed limits set where the majority of the drivers are driving. This increases kind of that vehicle to vehicle safety. If you don't have those difference in speeds of 15, 20 miles an hour, we see lower instances of speed. And then lower instances of crashes. And then by adding that safety component, we're also considering the multimodal interactions with other modes of travel. And using this system, we come up with a suggested speed limit. Next slide, please. All right, so this is the data that we look at for these studies. We have a team that goes out, collects a lot of this. I won't spend too much time on these. Like I said, it's in the manual, but really the point of this is just to show kind of the amount of data that we are looking at, the factors that we're considering when we make these recommendations. Going back to, it's not just, hey, this feels right, or, we think it's just safer if the speed limit's 10 miles an hour lower, or, it'd be great if people could drive 10 miles an hour faster. A lot of different components that we're looking at here. Next slide, please. All right, and then to get that, a lot of different data collection elements here. Team always goes out, takes some field visits, drives the roadways themselves, going out doing spot speed studies, really understanding what the speeds are. We also recently have been using a lot of kind of big data sources. You can see RIDIS, INRIX up there is a package that we have access to that really collects cell phone data, kind of turns it into travel time speeds. We have a good idea of, especially on our major arterials, how traffic moves at what speed, time of day, that sort of thing. And we also work very closely with TDOT. You can see, I think, 4 of those last 5 are all TDOT databases that they allow us access to, which is really a tremendous tool. Andrew was talking earlier about some of the crash data. ASH2Aware Safety is the program they use. Incredible tool. You can pull it up, draw a circle around an intersection, get that history. Makes our job a lot easier than combing through police reports, which we were doing not too long ago. All right, next slide. All right, so once we collect that data, the nice thing about this document is they built out a separate Excel spreadsheet that we're able to input into and come out with the suggested speed limit. And that's generally a pretty good starting point for us, as then we go through, a sanity check, kind of the same thing. Hey, let's go back out there, let's look at this data we collected. Does this seem right? Are there any issues? Do we need to recheck any of the data we entered? Is it something far off from what we're expecting? And then we go work with some of our government partners, MNPD, we go on the transit side, and TDOT. With these being state routes, we always want to make sure we're working closely with TDOT in it. We do have the ability to set the speed limits on these arterials, but again, want to keep them informed, that relation's strong. So next slide, please. And then implementation, bring it to Traffic and Parking Commission for approval, actually go out, swap out the signs through the Vision Zero program. We're looking to supplement with speed radar signs for feedback, so as those new traffic patterns are approached, drivers are receiving that visual cue. We also work to update our signal timing along with that. This is something we really focus on too, as most of our signal timings are set based on the speed limit or speeds our vehicles are traveled. So what we don't want to do, change the speed limit and really drastically impact the experience for users. By coming back in, updating this, we can keep traffic progressing, generally keep our splits pretty similar. Pedestrians, transit users, bicyclists, drivers, all experience a pretty steady, steady state, not too different from what they had before, except slightly lower speeds. And then finally, evaluation on the back end. Always want to come back and see how this functions, what impact is it having, what lessons learned can we apply to our next one. So that wraps up the presentation here. Happy to take any questions.
Yeah, and Chair, we wanted to give this background because we felt like the first time we brought this before you, we just kind of, okay, we want to change the speed limit here. We didn't really provide the background and the study that's involved here, so we wanted to take a step back and share with you that. And we're also doing this and sharing it with the council members. That was one of our gaps too, is we went out here and we didn't include the council members in some of our conversations, so they were hit a little bit by surprise. It's very important that they understand and know what we're trying to accomplish here too. So that's why we're asking for deferral to give us an opportunity. We actually have meetings with the council members scheduled to have that discussion with them. And then we will, I will say this, for the Dickerson Pike, which you've already approved, we had actually months of engagement with the community, but also with the council members for that. With this one, we did not. We brought it for you really before we had an opportunity to do that. So that's why we're asking for the deferral.
Any questions from commissioners?
One quick question is, you had mentioned that you're not using police reports anymore. When I go to the Vision Zero website, that's the only data source that I have as a member of the public. Is that?
Yes, so what I meant is we're not logging directly into police's database anymore. There's now systems that feed into, which makes it much easier to access some of that data.
It actually provides us a summary in an analysis of the cause of those incidents based on those police reports. So it is utilizing those police reports. It's more of a consolidation of that into one dashboard interface that we can see. Instead of actually digging into multiple crash reports, it consolidates that information for us so we can view it.
Can that be provided on the Vision Zero website so it's easier for people to go?
I think it's already on Nashville's open data source. We
can talk about that. Yeah, we can talk about how we grant access to that information.
Is based on the sense of urgency that the shareholders shared with us, is it possible to do this in less amount of time than 3 months deferral?
We feel like 3 months is appropriate. A couple of reasons why, the outreach, but also the signal timing enhancements that we're going to do. We're actually going to be doing retiming of the splits. What Derek actually mentioned So we would like to get that done and get that in the pipeline as well. So that's why we're asking for that outreach, and we feel like that it's going to take us that much time to do the retiming. We're actually already started some of the retiming of these corridors, but it is a lot of signals to look at.
With that in mind, once you all collect that data and what have you, when do we think it'll be actually installed and ready?
So from the time you actually
use,
approve it to the
yes.
time we initiate and do that, actually, I'm going to ask Andrew, we're actually pretty good at that turnaround. It usually, put the new signs up, it's within a few months when we do that. I would expect it would be shorter than that to get this out.
I'd estimate 30 to 60 days.
30 to 60 days.
So we're really talking 5 months till it's actually installed.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
At last meeting, we asked for a 1-month deferral in order to speak to the council member. Has that happened?
We have spoken to both council members on the phone. We are setting up meetings in person we have those meetings. Actually, we have a meeting tomorrow with one of our council members to talk about this.
And so the phone call to kind of help promote and provide information wasn't enough?
No, we also favor meeting in person to go over the data with them.
Why wasn't that provided to us last meeting, that 1 month wouldn't be enough?
At that time, we were trying to get things scheduled in there, and a month is a pretty short time actually to get things scheduled and get things turned around to where we're having enough time to do that, considering we had multiple calls with different NDOT staff members between the council members. So we are bringing all that together. We did not at the time. At the time, we thought that was appropriate, but it ended up not being appropriate.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I think I'm being against deferring this any longer, and I'd rather talk about some of the data behind it. You know, when I look through the Vision Zero Action Plan, it talks about Metro Council being stakeholders, and it talks about some of their key actions of how we're supposed to communicate with them. You know, it's providing an annual update to council and providing additional updates at Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. It then kind of doesn't necessarily talk about, you know, specific speed limits and how that operates, but it really is to try to help them promote it within their district versus any specific changes that could come out of this. And I'm not necessarily sure what would change in these 3 months.
No, that just gives us enough time to talk to the council members, but also give some outreach to the community. We're actually these are culture changes that we're trying to accomplish for the community. When we talk about Vision Zero holistically, we are not going to poll the community and ask them, hey, do you want the speed limit reduced or not? You know, that's not the point. The point is to have a conversation with the community and explain this to where, when it does happen, we get that culture change and we don't have those who are just resistant of it without understanding the full picture of what we're trying to accomplish.
How much lower is the speed limit going to be? Or what are we reducing it to?
So it's in different sections. So Derek, I don't know if you have that information, or Andrew, do you have that information on hand for the different sections? It's not consistent all the way through as far as one reduction. It's reduced further in some locations based on the context of the area.
Yes, I do. Just give me a few minutes.
Okay.
So down to 25, closer to the city. And
Correct. Lower speeds closer to the more. It's based on the context of the location within the city.
so somewhere like, Lebanon, Pike, and Donaldson, we're not going to see 25 out there. We're going to see more like 35, or what is it not a 45-mile-an-hour street right there?
Are you talking the proposed versus current?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. Generally, we're starting 25 on the downtown side, rising as we get out to the county border. I don't know if you have it up, Andrew, if we end at 40 or 45.
I have it in front of me from last month. I don't have, it's not anything I can throw up on the screen, though. The recommendation from last month's meeting was to reduce the posted speed limit from 30 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour from Korean Veterans Boulevard to Lindsley Avenue, from 40 to 25, from Lindsley Avenue to 700 feet west of Fessler's Lane, and that's kind of where the end of the reversible lane segment is. And at that point, Hermitage Avenue becomes Lebanon Pike. And then other segments, 700 feet west of Fessler's Lane to Spence Lane, reduced to 35 miles an hour from 45 miles an hour. From Spence Lane to Cottage Lane, reduced to 40 from 45. From Cottage Lane to Donaldson Pike, reduced to 35 from 40. And from Donaldson Pike to the county line, reduced to 35 miles an hour from 45 miles an hour.
So I think, given the concern and push from the public, and with respect to my fellow commissioner, we pushed 1 month last month, we're pushing another 3. There's obviously a need to take action here. If we defer this thing, can we, at next month's meeting, just understand where we are and have some actionable steps to know how we make, I understand we got to do outreach and things of that nature, but,
So Chair, if you're asking if we could go back and actually provide you an update status of where we're at and more of a comprehensive, we've done this and this and these steps we've taken in there, and then you can decide from that point forward, if another deferral is appropriate or not.
What I'm suggesting is a path forward to allow the commission to be more comfortable that whether it's 2 months or 3 months, like we understand how we get there.
Mm-hmm.
And, from what I'm hearing, a 1 month or a 3 month deferral doesn't feel like a comfortable thing given what we know about that corridor. But, if it was presented, and I understand it takes time to gather the data and the facts and all of that, right? But the same data and facts that we needed to gather back in June, right? So I'm making a suggestion here to not just say we need 3 more months because we need to do stakeholder involvement and some other stuff, but understand, okay, and it doesn't have to be as detailed as the list of the people that you need to reach out to, but just understanding what those steps are and how we get to the finish line.
Sure, you're talking like an engagement plan, and
It could be a Word document for a lot.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't have to be that detailed, just so that we can sit here and say by, because when you write out 3 months, we're talking November before you're ready, right? Like,
I understand we could deliver a engagement plan with milestones associated in that we can provide to the council, or to the commission.
And I guess further, when we presented the map a month ago requesting a deferral, what was the understanding then? We obviously did some excellent research and gathered some data to get to the speed limits and the reductions that we came to. What was it that we presented that and then the community came back and said, oh no, or what was the pushback then?
Well, if you remember, during the last meeting we had, a few of our council members, actually one was here in person, who reached out to us, and I think reached out to some of them on the commission too, asking for a deferral of this. So we talked to all of them and agreed to that deferral based on the request.
And since then, they haven't provided themselves available to come?
No, that's not true. They have provided themselves available. We've had discussions, but we continue to meet with them.
And they feel 3 months is acceptable as well?
That was that is our request. The
Right.
3 months is our request based on what we feel like we need to do in order to have the sufficient outreach. And when I say outreach, it's more education of what we're trying to accomplish.
It's just my suggestion. I'm deferring to you all's, you all's ability to get this done. I think for me, just understanding, what that looks like and when, and being able to have some tangible goals to get there is what I would like to see if we're deferring again. Okay, go ahead.
When was this first presented to the Vision Zero Advisory Committee?
February. They have on the state in February.
If,
I'll let NDOT speak on that, sorry.
Yes. So we've actually presented this several times to the Vision Zero Advisory Council as we've gone along. Early on, we presented when we started the studies. We actually, even to last year, we discussed with the Vision Zero Advisory Committee what we were doing as far as with the studies on the pikes. So yeah, we have presented multiple times to the Vision Zero Advisory Committee.
I see no reason to defer this. I'm happy to vote today, but that's me.
well, I wanted to defer to legal. I mean, if we don't, if the vote fails for deferral, what happens? Does the map then get implemented, or, I mean, what's before us right now to vote for is, it says updated discussion on reducing posted speed limits on Hermitage, and, is that the right one? Yeah. From Korean Veterans Boulevard to Wilson County. So the agenda item is an updated discussion. What are we voting on, I guess is the question.
Well, the agenda item would be for a 3-month deferral. That's what you would be voting on. So if you don't get a majority vote on that motion for a deferral, then nothing would happen. It would be back in your hands to decide what to do.
Which would be, we would vote on then a motion to implement a map or not, or just, it just be open?
Yeah, I mean, so in the absence of a majority of the board voting in favor of something at an open meeting, properly noticed open meeting, that's the only way you take action. So if it's something that needs your decision-making, this commission's decision-making, you're gonna have to follow that process. And if like the motion, the recommendation to defer for 3 months is not passed, the matter will not be deferred. You can at that point, be more specific and do a second motion to go ahead and implement it immediately or in 1 month or whatever, alternative you prefer. But again, that motion will still have to then pass, by a majority of a quorum of this group at this open meeting in order to have effect.
So in last month's meeting, item 5.8, the vote was to authorization to reduce posted speed limits along this corridor, and we voted to defer that 1 month. So if we decide not to defer it for 3 months, then we authorize the map from previous months, or we need a vote, or we need another motion to implement that.
If you don't vote to defer, then I guess the default presumption is that they're instructing y'all to proceed immediately with the implementation.
Chair, I would think that would be approval then of our first. It is the Traffic and Parking Commission's authority to change, speed limits. That's why we come before.
No, sure. I'm just a point of clarification here. If we don't defer it, I just want everybody to understand what happens if that happens. Question.
I would think I would defer to legal, but we never did vote to approve it, so we still would have to vote.
I'm sorry, I am wrong.
Approve it.
Yeah, no. If you haven't voted on it at all, the diminishment of the speed limit will not be implemented until you do.
Thank you for that clarification. I think this is a really tricky balance. I think that this is a truly deadly corridor. It is something that I think everybody thinks needs to be touched and addressed, and needed to be touched and addressed a long time ago. And so we are behind on this across the city on this corridor in particular. But I am mindful that both NDOT and what I have heard from the community and what I have heard from the council members is that there has not been community engagement here in the way that we have done it in every other part of town. And while it's unfortunate that we've had this data and that it has been presented, that doesn't do the community engagement necessary to get people to buy into these reduced speeds. And if we go forward without the council members present, if we go forward without that community engagement, I worry that we are creating a situation in which we lack the trust to continue to make the improvements we need on other corridors and other areas when it comes to the transit plan that we see before us today. And so while it can be frustrating to have to delay 3 months, while it can potentially be deadly to have to delay 3 months, if we don't have that community buy-in, it can be worse. And so I think I'm supportive of the deferral today for 3 months, but I will not be supportive of any further deferrals, and I want to make that clear.
I understand. Just a point of clarification, it's more around community engagement and not collecting more data to decide. I mean, you all have recommended in last month's meeting what the speed limits should be. So it's more community engagement around council people, community associations.
Community engagement and education.
And,
Yes,
and
sir.
it's your feeling that you need 3 months to engage in, what does that look like, just for my novice understanding?
What does the engagement look like?
Yes.
So the engagement takes the form of education and some sort of doing some actual physical meetings, going to neighborhood associations, going to council district meetings and giving an update of that and sharing with the community the study, what we're doing, talk about Vision Zero, what the purpose is. That's what we're really talking about when we talk about engagement. And then obviously working with the council members is another thing, listening to them, making sure they're aware. Like I said earlier, we did this extensively on Dickerson Road. We actually met with both council members and we did a lot of community engagement in that one. We did not on this project. That was our error, that we did that. And like the council member just said, we are looking for culture change and for buy-in. There is a risk that if there is a lot of resistance and we don't have the opportunity to do the proper engagement, then we could have problems with people even complying with the speed limit in there, which, is another challenge.
Is it an option to target our outreach to that? We can approve sections of this per month? And I don't know, and this is just me being open-minded. You can tell me that it's not a good idea, but just to show that we're progressing forward with, what we discuss in the community and understand as we're trying to get this pushed through.
So to make sure I understand, so if you're asking if we could go forward with a section of the corridor, maybe some of the portions that are closer to the downtown core.
Whatever the line of best fit is, or the line of, I don't know, or the whole thing may be the right approach, but I think to show some progress.
I mean, as part of it, I would favor doing a more holistic approach, but I mean, that is a possibility. I wouldn't say that it's not possible. It is possible to do that.
Commissioner?
So when I tried to look through traffic counts on this road, and, some of the things were said before, but at the county line, the AADT is 25,000, and then it goes up to 34,000 to get on the highway, and then it starts to just crater off as it goes downtown to 10,000. So it seems pretty clear to me that most people are using this road from out of county and then also to get to other highways here. So what's the engagement plan going to be to talk to out of county people and see if they're going to follow the speed limit that we set?
That's a good question. So we will be mainly targeting our engagement to Davidson Metro County. So it's part of kind of a holistic conversation that we're having. The same thing with the Choose How You Move transit plan, talking about that connectivity to downtown and the connections to other areas as a system. It's all the same part of the system, right? Even beyond the boundaries. So to be honest, the public doesn't really care if it, if they don't see county lines and county responsibilities, right? They don't see if it's TDOT's road or NDOT's road or whose road it is, they care about, safety and that infrastructure condition in there. So, but it is, I will say this, we are definitely targeted to Metro Davidson County, but there are opportunities when we talk with the Greater Nashville Regional Council, when we talk to the MPO, there are other opportunities that we can reach and talk to our county partners as well.
I just want to make the point that, as we talk about that, we're talking about the transit plan and the fact that it's 60% of the funding comes from not necessarily people in this county. So we are voting to tax other people. And I think that, as we set these rules, we're seeing that the concern isn't just from people within this county. The harm is likely coming from people from outside of the county too. And that was a question that I submitted that I didn't get an answer to of, where are people who are in these injury accidents from? Why, what, are they traveling there? Are they there? I mean, I think that there's a lot of issues here, and I'm definitely not comfortable with another 3 months on this.
Yeah, could we do 1 month and bring it back next month to figure out where we are?
So I was going to suggest, and then open up the floor to a motion, is a 1 month deferral with the expectation that an update around the community engagement and where we are is obviously, it doesn't seem to be the data that we're lacking. It just seems to be input from the community. And then if there's ways to address areas now, we could bring that forward, but community engagement is important, and understanding, although that hadn't happened, it does need to happen, and allowing time for that, I feel is important. So with that, I'll open up for a motion on the item.
Motion to defer 1 month on this?
We have a second?
Second.
It's been first and second. Any questions on the motion?
So if we're deferring this a month, then will it be 3 months after that, or is this 1 month included in the 3 month request?
My understanding is that we're deferring it a month with them coming back with some updates, but the commission does have the power and the right to reject another deferral and vote and/or, implement the map as presented 2 months ago. Is that correct, Ms. Costones?
Yes, you could vote to approve the plan without further delay, if that was something you wanted to make a motion on.
Any other questions on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? We have one opposed. It has been deferred for 1 month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7.3, update of sidewalk encroachment permit suspension for Munchies LLC. We call it Rook. Rooker. Gotcha. Please state your name for the record.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? Sorry, Commissioner, go ahead.
No, you're fine. Mr. Rooker, if you would mind providing an update from last month to now.
Yes, sir. Richard Rooker with NDOT. Last month, we brought Munchies in because of numerous violations and numerous citations being written, court dates given, fines implied to him. I got an email, let me look here, on July the 29th, saying that he had been working again, but he's working under another company. So I'm not sure that that was the commission's intent. I'm not sure, but he is working under Fly City Conies, and I have a Central Bike Unit report here, email from one of the officers. So he has been working, but he's been working for another company. We don't have any evidence that he's been working under the permit of Munchies. As to his slow pay, he did file a slow pay on June the 17th, and he was ordered to pay $20 a month. On June 17th, he paid $393, and he does not have another payment due until this month. So he did make a payment, a quite large payment, and his balance has gone from $1,927 to $1,334. So that's the information that we have. Not sure the legality of him working for another company. Like I said, we don't have any evidence that he worked under his permit, but he is working under another permit.
Thank you. Just in the meeting minutes, Commissioner Gibbs made a motion that NDOT, pronounce your name for me, just so I don't.
Yes, sir. Mina Farid.
Mr. Farid worked together to get all citations dealt with, meaning that he is on a payment plan that will be moving him toward getting these tickets paid off. Any violations that are repeatedly happening, they will be addressed, whether it be size of cart or visibility of permits, the proper people work here, all of these things need to be addressed. And once they are, all of these people need to come back and say that everything has been taken care of. He is now in compliance with the law and he is paying his tickets. At that time, the suspension be lifted. So with that, I will open up to commissioners if there's any questions or comments to this matter, yes.
I think I just have one question. Can't prevent somebody from working for another company, but is Fly City Companies in compliance as far as we know?
As far as we know, yes, ma'am.
Can I say something, Commissioner? I paid, before I come here today, I paid the $200 extra, and sorry about that. I have my slow pay copy from the court, and I have my $595 receipt, and I have my $200 receipt if you would like to see it. I just printed off this morning before I come in.
This is an additional to the 393?
Yes, sir.
Name those numbers again.
He paid $593 on the 17th. His original balance that he owed was $1,927.25. He made that payment. His balance now is $1,334.25. So he is in compliance with the court order.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners?
There were some concerns around making sure that the carts were the correct size and visibility of permits. Has that discussion happened?
He has not been using his cart. He's been using the cart of the person that he has been working for. So as far as we know, but we haven't had any reports we've had any of any issues with that.
I believe that we were asking if you two would work together to have that discussion of would they be in compliant if he started using them again?
They would not if he's using the carts that he has. They're not in compliance. They're too large. And they, with the speakers and all the stuff that we've had the issues with, he would not be in compliance.
So the carts that you're using now is with Fly City Conies LLC?
Yes, sir.
And they're in compliance?
They are in compliance.
So the carts that you own, have you gotten them up to compliance?
The cart, I have two carts, Commissioner. One which is, you're talking about the bigger, it's 2 feet longer. I have another cart that's shorter, and I was working with that one. I can get to work with this one. It doesn't have a speaker built into it, but I'm not going to be playing music anymore.
Thank you.
That's the law. Yes, sir. Thank you.
So the smaller car, is it in compliance? I guess is the question. I don't know
Yes,
what the
sir.
measurements are. Okay.
He just has one cart that's too large. That is correct.
That's true.
Sorry, Commissioner. Just clarifying that.
I feel like that was what our question was to remove from suspension, was making sure that we know what is in compliance. Were the permit displays, was that discussed at all to make sure that those are in the right spot?
Yeah, it was discussed with who, I didn't discuss anything with anybody, but I know that it should be displayed. And if I got back to work under my own card, I will display it in the right place. And just to clarify one thing, Coney's the other company, it's one of my friends in downtown, and when he heard about that, and I didn't want to go work under my suspended license for sure, because I don't want to break any more rules, he told me that I can work under his card, and he got me a badge from NDOT under his legal company, and I was working, giving him some money for sure, but instead of sitting in the house so I can pay my tickets.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? So I think the agenda item was an update on this. Legal, can we motion or vote to remove, or is this at the discretion? Remove the suspension, or what are the steps here?
So the suspension has been in place since prior to last month, and it remained in place during this last month. So basically, the provisions in the code about suspensions provide that when the conditions have been met to the satisfaction of the commission, that suspension can be lifted. So you all kind of need to decide if everything that you're hearing is adequate and that you're comfortable that he's kind of met all these conditions and that he is capable of proceeding in a way that will be compliant with the code and the regulations, and that he can go back to working for himself.
Mr. Ruger, if I may ask, what would be your recommendation in this situation?
If he will follow the rules, I mean, you know, he's done everything that you set forth for him to do the last month to this month. The one cart that he has is just too large. So if he doesn't operate with that one cart and uses the other cart, I mean, he's done what this commission's asked him to do.
Thank you. I think it's warranted that, given that he maintains and, you know, continues to make payment, I would like to see an update again next month, just to ensure that we're still maintaining payments and staying within the guidelines of vending. But I would be open.
I will be happy to meet on the call the Traffic Violations Bureau and check with the clerk's office on the date that his payment is due. But if he's made another $2 payment, and he's only set up to pay $20 a month, and he's already paid $700, so I mean he still has to go in and make, just because he's made a big payment, he still has to go in and make that $20 a month payment.
I understand.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I was just going to say, it does require a vote of you all to lift the suspension.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to lift his suspension? Mr. Fawad's suspension?
Second.
Any questions on the motion? If I may add, just that we would have an update next month on the agenda. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? I'd like to commend you for responding and stepping up, and wish you all the best in your business ventures.
I appreciate you so much, you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rook.
And God willing, I'll make another payment before next month meeting. Thank you.
Next meeting, bring the cart.
I got you.
Ready to cook.
Free hot dogs for everybody.
I'm just
I
joking.
got you.
We did not have any new business. Other items, item 9.1, Vision Zero crash statistics summary. Staff.
Some months ago, Commissioner Woods had asked for kind of a monthly update on Vision Zero statistics, so this is just kind of part of that, and Mr. Hagerty has some more to say about that as well.
Not too much more to say, but you see the statistics there. It's year-to-date for 2024 versus last year at this time. It's broken into a couple of different categories. That top box there, we're splitting out really by jurisdiction, interstate, state route, local. And then the second column you can see is broken out by mode type. And just want to note that anything that happens on the interstate is not included in that second table. While some of our education efforts can impact what happens on the interstates, from an engineering standpoint, not much we can influence at the local level.
Any questions from commissioners?
This is through end of July?
That's correct.
Thank you, it's very helpful.
Any other questions?
Any, I guess, idea why there's I don't know, has there been some type of change to cause such a dramatic drop in single vehicle?
Yeah, good question. It's really difficult to say at this point. Luck certainly plays a factor in it. And I think we're also starting to see some of the first impacts of the Vision Zero program being adopted. Obviously, street lighting, some projects being installed, educational efforts. But do want to make sure that we understand this is a 525 square mile county. There's a lot going on. Probability always plays a factor in this as well. But we do think some of the efforts by this commission, the Vision Zero Advisory Committee, elected officials, NDOT are starting to have an impact, and we hope these numbers continue to trend this way moving forward.
I think you're also seeing the effects of the recent changes in speed limits along some of our streets in the GSD and USD.
Go ahead.
Has the Vision Zero report card been created yet?
Not an official, unless you have one with you. We have not released one.
We do have a Vision Zero report, sort of a report card we can bring before the commission and bring before the Vision Zero Advisory Group. That came at a period when we were transitioning from our previous, you actually met one of our previous Vision Zero coordinator, Gwinnett. She actually came and introduced herself. Today we were going to have our new Vision Zero coordinator come to the commission. However, they weren't able to make it here today. So yes, we do have a summary put together of the previous year. It's still under review internally by members of the department, but we are intending to get that in front of the Vision Zero Task Force, but also you yourself as well.
Is that something you would like to see an update on, or
Yeah, I mean,
have input?
I feel like once that's there, sometimes it feels like some of the Vision Zero stuff is kind of buried underneath the advisory committee, and you have to go through meetings instead of, here's the report card. This should be an easy thing to kind of maintain as an updated dashboard moving forward.
Yeah, it's a good point. So we do want to have this type of information more visible, like on the website and in other places. So we will be working to get more reporting out there, updates to our Vision Zero dashboard as well. That is in the pipeline.
Yeah, and if we have these again, fatalities, obviously that's worst case scenario, but trying to reduce severe injuries as well, if we could see that in the future.
Anything else? Thank you for that update. We have one more item, the valet operator license summary.
We have no updates, no submissions this time.
Just one.
Just
We have
one.
one,
Oh,
right?
I'll apologize. I thought we.
So, a little context, this is, we deferred, or not deferred, we voted to allow NDOT to issue these. So this is just, as we bring on new valet operators, y'all are going to share who they are and if they had everything they needed, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay.
This is just presented as information to the commission that's pursuant to the policy that the commission just recently passed.
Gotcha. Any questions?
One question, so this is just the operator license, they haven't submitted for any permits at this time?
This is the operator license, that's correct.
And there's no permits?
Permits are issued by this commission.
I guess the question, have they applied for any permits yet? No?
No, the answer is no.
Okay.
In a month?
It hasn't become before us yet. It could be in the next month, but we will let you know when we'll put it in the agenda.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions? Captain John?
Motion to adjourn.
Approved, thanks. Thank you, everybody.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.